Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. We got a loaded panel. My co-host, David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network in the house a little bit later on. North Carolina A&T head football coach Vincent Brown will stop by to preview the Aggies. They're taking on Wake Forest at Wake Forest next Thursday in the season opener. So we'll talk to him a little bit Aggie football. And we'll get into three things I loved, hated this weekend. It is the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth in inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Welcome into the Desmond Johnson Show. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by my co-host, David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network. What's going on, DG? How you doing on this kind of a cool Tuesday? I just walked outside with the dog, and I was like, yo, it's like 78 degrees outside. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great, Des. I've had my summer travels for many, many years now. I've always thought of mid-August and late August as sort of the start of the sports calendar in our state, right?
Yes.
NFL regular season is almost here. College football regular season is almost here. NHL and NBA aren't too far away. So for our state, of course, we don't have Major League Baseball yet. It just feels like late August is kind of like January is to the calendar year. Late August is sort of the start of the sports year. So I always get my travels in the summer so that I can recharge the batteries for all the fun stuff we get to talk about.
Yeah, I took the family down to Myrtle Beach just to get away. I hadn't gone anywhere all summer. I'd kind of worked through it, and I booked everything. And I was like, man, my hotel room is really cheap for this time of the year. And then I went on and realized there was a hurricane on its way there because I booked like a week out. So I basically stalked Debbie for like a week, just trying to track her progress and kind of hoping it hit early and everything. And Thursday, me and my family, we slept in. So the first rain band came through the Triad, and it was glorious sleep. We slept through that. We left around 4, and we hit another band going south, like through like Randolph County, Asheboro, like as it came back around again. But once we got through that and got across the state line, it was okay. And Myrtle Beach was pretty much abandoned at that point. So we had a great time. Got a chance to recharge and everything. We did a couple of sneak peeks of this show before I took off. And you're absolutely right. I've got I had 2 high school football coaches shows last night. We've got one tonight, got another one tomorrow. High school football starts across the state on Friday. Tobacco Road is your home for Triad coverage of those high school sports. We will have 4 live football games going on at the same time simultaneously on Friday night that you can catch on a variety of different platforms, headlined by Glenn taking on Ledford on the WTOB game of the week and Grimsley taking on Mount Tabor on the WCOG game of the week, which is probably one of the bigger games in the state this upcoming week. So we got all kinds of stuff going on. Again, we got head coach Vincent Brown from North Carolina A&T coming in about 12:45 or so. So we'll chop it up with him in just a bit. But of course, whenever I've got DG in the house, I like to bounce around a couple different topics. And what better than the 3 things I loved, hated this weekend? One of the things I actually loved, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do live in the area. It was the announcement Saturday from the Madhouse at Bowman Gray that NASCAR will be coming to Bowman Gray for the Clash, February 2nd, 2025. I didn't realize this. They did this in LA, I guess last year or year before, but they modeled that track around Bowman Gray. And for those who don't know, Bowman Gray was the first paved track in NASCAR history. This will be the first time NASCAR has been there for a NASCAR sanctioned event, I think in 50 years. I think the 71, I think was the last time they were there for something. Richard Petty won his 100th victory at Bowman Gray. So they've had Junior Johnson and these guys come through there over time. Your thoughts on this, not so much in terms of the intricacies of NASCAR, but just in general, it feels like NASCAR is trying to get back to its roots. It had been kind of talked about that maybe they had gone too far away from where they had been. But over the past 2 years in particular, we've seen them come back to places like North Wilkesboro and now Bowman Gray. Your thoughts on what NASCAR is trying to do here in terms of make amends with the original fans of NASCAR?
Yeah, Des, after growing up in Pennsylvania, when I was that transplanted Yankee down here in North Carolina in the latter part of the 1980s, I didn't know much about NASCAR. But if you fast forward, I came to learn very quickly that almost every NASCAR team is based in or near Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're famous for our college basketball. You know, we're famous for our barbecue on the food side. We're famous for all sorts of different athletic backgrounds. Heck, we just hosted a golf major, right? And we're going to host another golf major this coming year. So we have this diverse athletics culture here in North Carolina, but there is no sport that is more North Carolina centric than NASCAR, period. I mean, occasionally there's a team based in Colorado or somewhere else, but you go down to the greater Charlotte area, maybe a 1 hour radius around Charlotte, there's like 20 different teams historically there. And you mentioned North Wilkesboro. Of course, that is a huge part of NASCAR history. And there had been a long gap. My daughter went to App State, and I would drive right through North Wilkesboro, and I would remember what the locals used to celebrate only a little bit to the west of where you are right now. They used to celebrate that as one of the places that the locals appreciated NASCAR most in the entire country. And then, as you said, they started to go to bigger tracks in places where there wasn't quite as much NASCAR passion. And I think they are getting back to their roots. So the Bowman Gray example is an example of that. These last couple years, the return to North Wilkesboro is a huge part of it. And I personally have been to an all-star race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the track race nearby Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, in Charlotte, they host several major events every year. But that was a nice headline to see, given that NASCAR has had its ups and downs over the last decade or so, and it seems to be back on the upswing as it relates to our state.
Yeah, and people, you nailed it on the head there. I was watching actually. I had Cliff Bumgarner and Chris Lee from WRLL a couple weeks ago. They were previewing their wrestling documentary when Giants were here that debuted on PBS last week, and I actually sat down and watched it finally a day or two ago. And I'd kind of forgotten growing up here, there was no pro team until the Hornets in 88, 87. So before that, as a kid, it was literally NASCAR and pro wrestling. Like that was kind of that's all North Carolina really had. There was no major sports team here. If you were in NFL, you were probably a Redskin fan. And if you were into basketball, it's whoever, Lakers, Celtics, whatever, there was nobody really close by. So until the late 80s, there really wasn't like something else outside of NASCAR to pull people in. And I just find it, funny that NASCAR decided they needed to build out like across like these super speedways in Texas and California and all over the place, when really the sport started here or the Eastern Seaboard, I should say. And Bowman Gray played a huge part of it. That's a rabid fan base. That place seats 19,000 people. So they're going to pack that in. Little worried about the date. It's February the 2nd. Here in North Carolina, that could go a number of ways. It could be 75 degrees outside February 2nd. It could be a foot of snow on the ground. Like now, having said that, we haven't really seen snow in the past like 2 years. So it's been pretty balmy winters. So they're probably okay. But that was the main thing I saw dipping into Bowman Gray groups yesterday. People were like, oh, it's going to be really cold and all this stuff. They're going to pack that stadium up. They do it every Saturday already. So that was the first thing that I saw this weekend that kind of made me smile, that Winston's going to get that recognition. It's going to be aired on Fox. There's going to be a documentary on FS1 about it. It's going to go into Bowman Gray's history. So it's a time for Bowman Gray to shine and do their thing. Also, from this past weekend, the Carolina Panthers played preseason game number 2. Did not win the game, losing to the Jets, but did get into the end zone at the very end. None of the starters played. None of the starters played preseason week 1 either, and they just announced they're playing the Bills week 3, and the Bills are already announced today on Tuesday that they're not playing their starters, which makes me feel like Carolina's not going to play their starters either. My question to you, Mr. David Glenn, is preseason even necessary like anymore in the NFL? Because I was just talking to Jonathan Stewart and Skylar Callahan. We just did Believe in Panthers right before this, and it's all, you don't have preseason any other level of football. There's no preseason in high school. There's none in college. There's none in Pop Warner. But for monetary reasons, there's some in the NFL. How do you see this going with the NFL probably moving to 18 games and a 2-game preseason schedule probably next year. They probably wish they could do it this year if they could have got it in. But is preseason even that necessary to you? And do you even pay attention to preseason games?
Yeah, you know the trade-off here. Coaches will tell you all the time they hate the injury risk factor, right? I mean, you're paying these guys tens of millions of dollars in some cases to be star players for you, and then some freak accident could happen in a meaningless, basically, preseason game, and you lose the ability to have that guy on your squad when the games start mattering. The trade-off, of course, is that these coaches want and need and demand the backups especially to play against someone wearing a different colored uniform. They usually say, I can only learn so much when they're going against their own teammates, week after week, day after day. And you do learn about your backups, but you might not learn enough. So I think what you just put your finger on is going to be the compromise. If the regular season does get longer as expected, the preseason is going to get shorter. That doesn't mean you have zero injury risk factor, especially with so many starters being rested. But it's that happy medium, I guess, where coaches will get in the future 2 instead of 3 chances to see their guys against opposing teams. Plus some of those mini camps they have where, at least in practice, you can bring in an opponent for a lower contact kind of experience. So, but I don't know if it's going to be going away entirely anytime soon. Maybe as much because of the competitive factor as because of the financial factor.
Yeah, and I told myself I wasn't going to watch that preseason game Saturday. I ended up watching the entire thing from beginning to end. Like, I just never turned it away. And for me, I'm kind of a nut in terms of like wanting to know the depth and who's out there and some names to kind of try to remember, although it's almost impossible at this point. The Panthers are going through some injury issues right now too. So I will say this, I am not last year, I think we were kind of casting a blind eye to some danger signs at this point of the preseason that we probably should have been paying more attention to. I think we were just kind of in the honeymoon phase with Frank Wright and no Matt Rule and all that kind of stuff. This year, I think Panther fans have been more critical of what they're seeing. And from what I saw in preseason game 2, it at least feels like the offense has a direction. Like they have a plan. Like there's a drastic difference between last year and this year in terms of what they're putting out there play-wise. I'm not so concerned about Bryce Young being out there. The 2 starting guards that they paid $150 million to, they're not even playing. They're injured right now. So why would you throw Bryce out there? To me, it's more Panther fans are seeing Pat Mahomes doing behind the back passes to Travis Kelce, and it's going viral. And they're like, well, why are their starters playing and ours aren't? Like, well, they're the Chiefs, and they're on a whole different situation going on there. They're probably out there to practice that play. So it's a little bit of a different situation. But preseason, we're probably going to be an 18-game schedule next year, and we'll kind of see what they do with the preseason there. DG joining me here on the Desmond Johnson Show, the Tuesday edition. I want to continue a quick conversation. Well, it wasn't quick. A conversation I had with Jalen Gilkey from WFMY, who goes every other week with you co-hosting on Tuesdays. Last week, I had him and Shannon Smith on from Boom Broadcasting. We were talking about Steph Curry. It was right after the Olympics had ended, and I was making the argument that Steph Curry is a top 10 all-time NBA player now going forward. Was that flurry that he had at the end of the gold medal game, was that the most Steph Curry thing we've seen? Because I was thinking back on it. I was like, we've seen a lot of Steph Curry moments, but was that like the pinnacle of won a gold medal. It was for his country. He'd never been in the Olympics before. And there's the iconic shot now of him shooting that last one over the 2 defenders.
Incredible.
With Kevin Durant and LeBron, like with their hands raised, like I'm open. And the saying is that this is the only man on earth where it's acceptable for him to take a shot like this with those 2 guys wide open over inside. Just talk to me about Steph, man, because you followed him his entire career from Davidson onward. Yeah. You've seen him do some pretty crazy stuff. Is it kind of wild to say that he's a top 10 all-time player? Because my list, I had it Jordan 1, Kareem 2, Magic 3, Kobe 4, LeBron 5, Bird 6, Shaq 7, Russell 8, Steph 9, Shaq 10, I believe is what I had it. With like Duncan like right at 11. And Duncan's kind of the one that got pushed out for Steph, in my opinion. Where do you have Steph in terms of that kind of thing? Or do you even do that kind of thing with the rankings?
Yeah, I do sometimes. I'll tell you this, just in the state of North Carolina, we have one heck of a greatest ball players from our state list. Michael Jordan, of course, played high school and college ball here in North Carolina. Chris Paul played high school and college ball here in North Carolina. That's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and a guy who's been all NBA 10 times. The list of people who've been all NBA 10 or more times is not a long list, and Chris Paul is on it. Steph Curry is in that mix. Obviously, we have James Worthy and David Thompson and Pete Maravich, and I mean, all sorts. Dominique Wilkins. Just our state is crazy, right?
Jeez.
But to answer part of your question, I think the beauty of it, even beyond those multiple NBA titles with the Golden State Warriors, he's also been, remember, a 2-time NBA scoring champ. He's been, I think, a 7 or 8-time NBA All-Star, 7 or 8-time All-NBA guy. And a 2-time MVP, Steph Curry. But in that Olympic snapshot, as you said, not only were Kevin Durant and LeBron James in that memorable photo, late in that game against France, Kevin Durant had the ball in his hands and said, I better give it back to Steph.
Yeah.
And LeBron James they ran that pick and roll with LeBron and Steph. And one time Steph hit the 3 from the top of the key. The other time Steph faked the pass to LeBron, kept the ball, faked his defender off his feet, and then made that 3. At the end, the best players in the world were all saying, we better give the ball to Steph as well.
Yep.
My favorite quote, Des, was Bam Adebayo, who's another North Carolinian, actually, from the Team USA squad. When he saw the 2 players from France around Steph, and Steph still took the off-balance 3-pointer, Bam said that his thought to himself was, what the bleep? And then the rest of his quote is, then I remembered who was taking the shot, and that made it okay. I thought that was the quote of the Olympics, and that was the shot or series of shots of the Olympics.
It was crazy.
So
I was actually at the beach.
Your list is a good one. Well, let's start here. Steph Curry is the greatest pure shooter in the history of the sport of basketball.
Yes.
Period. Now, you can argue about top 10 and all the rest, but he has his place, and he's not done yet. And I mean truly in the history of the sport of basketball, meaning globally, and, of course, what he did at Davidson at the college level and what he's done with the Warriors in the NBA.
Watch Kevin Durant on that last shot. He's so frustrated as the ball's in the air that he didn't get the pass. Because he goes like this to like this, and then he just like this, like literally like a 2-second stretch. Because again, the same thing. It's like, what is he doing? Oh, I forgot who's shooting the ball. And like, people are coming down on Steve Kerr for the way he coached this team. And I think that flurry kind of personified Steve Kerr's coaching style, which is basically, what are you going to do? It's Steph Curry. Like, I've seen this happen a billion times. Like, in the beginning, we told him not to shoot it. And now it's like, he's the only one who's got the green light to shoot it wherever. I was looking at the Warriors projected starting 5, and that's not it. What do you think the odds are that Steph might get traded? Because the one thing that I saw from watching them play together, my mind started thinking, what if LA could get Steph to the Lakers to pair
Wouldn't
with
that be fun?
AD and LeBron? Yeah, that would.
Hey,
he would be the perfect complement for the two.
You know how it works, with very few exceptions. Once any athlete gets near the end of his career, and if he ends up on a lesser team, which I agree, the Warriors are on the downslope, it is very common for that guy that you've only seen in one professional uniform, which is pretty rare in the modern era. But Steph has only been a Warrior at that level. It wouldn't surprise me at all. He is 36 years old. So if you're the Warriors and you know you're in a little bit of a rebuild, maybe you ship him out for assets in return. We'll see. But I just wish good things for Steph, because out of all the famous people I've interviewed in this state over my 35-year career, he is as close to a first-class human being before you get to what he is as an athlete as anybody that I've ever met.
I was going to ask you about ACC football, who you thought was going to get into the playoffs, but I'm going to save that for the next time you come through, because knowing our luck, usually whenever I have VG on, something's happened with Florida State and something legally. So usually that didn't happen this week for whatever reason, but I'm pretty positive by the time we get to the start of the ACC season, we'll have something to talk about with Florida State, because they're going across the pond to play their opener. Is that this weekend?
Yeah,
so that they're opening up.
It's here almost.
All the stuff is here. Speaking of here in the house with us right now, he is the head coach of the North Carolina A&T Aggie football program, Mr. Vincent Brown, in the house. What's going on, Coach Brown? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We're doing good. We're
Doing
doing good. We're just sitting here talking about, everything starting. And as you know, everything is starting for you as well. This is your second full season at A&T. And I've had the pleasure of being able to cover you guys and be able to broadcast A&T football across the Triad and across the country on Sirius XM and other outlets like Tobacco Road. Tell us how you're feeling going into this opener as opposed to last year, because last year you kind of got in a little bit later. You had mentioned when I interviewed you then that, you were kind of a little late to the game for the portal and things like that because of the timing. This is your real first full off season with the Aggies. Give me an idea of the difference that it's been this year preparing as opposed to last year.
Yeah, first of all, having that full cycle of knowing your players, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, being able to go out and recruit our first full recruiting class to bring in guys that fit the recruiting profile and model that we believe is going to allow us to be successful has been probably the biggest difference. Anytime you're putting a staff together, the first year, there's a lot of nuances to making sure that everybody's on the same page. Obviously, we've had some changes in our original staff since last season. I think we've gotten better in a number of areas, not just with our players, but with our staff cohesiveness, and the things that we believe in that will allow us a chance to win football games here.
DJ.
Hey, Coach David Glenn here. I've been covering sports here in North Carolina for 35 years, and one of my favorite aspects to just the culture of our state is the rivalries. And one of those rivalries is the Aggie-Eagle Classic. I know you have a Mississippi Valley State background and an NFL background, and you've been kind of around the world. How do you put into words, maybe when you run into A&T fans, the importance of beating those Eagles no matter what else happens in a given year?
Yeah, well, I think the fans have stressed their importance to me, the importance of winning that game. It is a tremendous rivalry. Last year's game here was, pregame was kind of a little bananas, and just the passion that everyone has around both programs and both universities. So much of what makes college football fun and exciting. And, we look forward to every opportunity to go in and compete against those guys. But, as we say to, our fans and to our kids, the most important game is the very next one. And our next game is against Wake Forest. So that's where our focus is right now.
And we'll have that game for you on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. And I believe it's on terrestrial radio on the Triad. I'll have to check what station it'll be on. But I know definitely it'll be on Tobacco Road. It'll be on Sirius XM. You can listen to that game. 7 o'clock kickoff. It should be a 6:30 pregame show with Donald Ware and Al Swan. I'll be in the booth for pregame, halftime, scoreboard, that kind of stuff. So the gang's all back. Everything's starting Thursday next week as you travel over across the two counties to Wake Forest. Tell me from last year, you guys were shuffling quarterbacks in and out in terms of trying to figure out who wanted to take that mantle. Has someone taken the reins this year that you feel pretty confident saying here on August the 20th it's going to be our starter going into next week at quarterback against Wake Forest?
Yeah, I mean, I think the competition is ongoing. I think Kevin White's had a really, really good camp so far. And then Justin Fumby's brought a lot of leadership, poise, and experience to the position. We're not ready to anoint anyone the guy just now, but I feel really confident that the level of play at that position has improved dramatically. They both have exhibited things that we believe are necessary to win, which is protecting the football first and foremost, not putting the ball in jeopardy, knowing how to distribute it, and operating within our new offensive structure has been a real bonus for both of those kids because, it gives them a chance to showcase their ability to distribute the ball, which we're excited about.
Coach, how long is the list of things you feel better about here in August 2024 than maybe the day you got hired in January of 2023? Because I've owned businesses, and it's like on the early days of any startup I've ever been involved with, there just feels like a level of chaos where you never get to the end of your checklist. I'm sure there's still a lot of moving parts, but how is year two different than year one?
It is night and day. Probably the biggest difference is I've seen a shift in our kids and their understanding of the expectations that we have of them, not just as players and the amount of work that you have to put in to be an elite football player, but also the work required in the classroom and how you conduct yourself in the community. Our kids are great ambassadors of our program. They've improved tremendously with the academic performance, understanding that they're here first and foremost to become educated men. And when we saw that shift, the focus on the field improved also. Our kids started to study more and have been more in tune with the things that we're trying to get taught as a coaching staff. So that's been a real blessing for us. We're excited to open up the season to see what I believe will be a dramatic difference between where we were last year and where we are now.
Let me ask you this question too before we get out of here. I just spoke. Me and David Glenn, we were talking about this before he came on. In terms of NFL preseason, I kind of suckered myself into watching that Panthers preseason game on Saturday and just kind of stayed there like the whole game, even though I probably could have dipped in and out and would have got the same gist of everything. As a former NFL player, what does preseason mean to you? Because again, I said to DG, we don't have preseason in any other level of football. You guys don't get preseason. There's no preseason in high school football, Pop Warner. The NFL is the only thing that really has preseason football. And every time I ask an athlete or a former NFL player about this, they're kind of like, yeah, I didn't really need it. Like, how do you feel about preseason? Because now you're looking at it as a former player, but also as a coach. And it's seeing the value of it on that end too, I guess. But what are your thoughts on NFL preseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity for the owners primarily to generate revenue and not have to share it with the
there
players.
It is. There it is.
It's a lot of wear and tear on the players' bodies, and they've shortened the preseasons and extended the regular season. So, I'm always for the mindset of how do you get yourself and your team ready to compete at tournament time, as Coach Parcells used to talk about it. And being available is probably as important than, any other aspect. So staying healthy, and if you can minimize the wear and tear on your body, by all means, I'm all for it,
I think they're going to get down to 2 next year and 18 regular season games, which would have sounded crazy 10 years ago, but it seems like that's where they're heading. You got your hands full coming up here against an ACC opponent in Wake Forest out in Winston-Salem next Thursday. It opens up the 2024 season for the North Carolina A&T Aggies. And again, Tobacco Road Sports Radio is your home for North Carolina A&T athletics. We will have every football game, home and away, with Donald Ware and Al Swan on the call. You can actually sync that call up. There's places online. I'll find that for you guys next week before the game where you can sync up radio calls to television and that kind of stuff as well. So we'll get all that there for you. Coach Brown, anything you want to get out of here with to say to Aggie Nation as we're on the precipice of the beginning of the 2024 football season? Because all this stuff's going to start rolling downhill like today.
Yeah. We're super excited to kick off the season. Our mantra for this season is we're chasing excellence in everything that we do. And by design, not a target in terms of wins. It's just we want to be excellent, excellent habits, excellent preparation, excellent effort produces excellent results. And so that's where our mindset is. And we're excited to get the season underway.
So that'll be Actually, I'll see you Monday. I'll see you Monday for our weekly press conference. That you can find that on the North Carolina A&T YouTube Athletic channel and the Facebook Watch for North Carolina A&T Athletics, and the Coaches Show with Vincent Brown will be. Check your local listings in the area on terrestrial radio. We will air that. I think we air it on Wednesdays and then again on Saturdays right before the game. So you'll be able to catch it here on Tobacco Road also. Coach, appreciate you coming through. Good luck on Thursday and the rest of the season, and I will see you on Monday.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
man.
You all take care.
You too.
And that'll do it for us. DG will be back in 2 weeks. Jalen Gilkey will be in next Tuesday to discuss what happened over the weekend. At that point, by the time I see DG again, we'll be in college football season, and we'll be this much closer to the beginning of the NFL season. So we'll definitely have a whole lot to get through. DG, congratulations. I saw you guys crossed over. Was it like it was a certain number of subscribers on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, we got past 15,000, which is hard to do at all.
That's amazing.
You
haven't been up for a year yet, have you?
Right around a year. I think we just hit our year mark. So thanks to everybody, including your viewers and listeners. That we had a lot of targets in a lot of categories. That one, we went way past our target. So
that's amazing.
Something's working on YouTube, and it's certainly not my looks. So got to be something else. So thanks to everybody for being a part of that. And thanks to you, Des, for our continued friendship and professional relationship.
Absolutely. I was talking before we get out, I was talking to Josh Graham a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about how there's such a vacuum for this kind of coverage in the triad where it makes it where he can exist, I can exist, you can exist. Like there's so much room to cover all this stuff. And it's not like we're really stepping on each other's toes. And I love the fact that we're able to kind of cross promote and everybody do their thing, what they're doing with OG, Triangle Media, Joe Giglio and Joe Ovies and Dimitri Ravenos and Lauren Brownlow and all those folks out there in the Triangle. I do stuff with them all the time. So I love the fact that we're able to kind of, instead of going, oh no, all the jobs are gone or whatever, we all kind of went out and just created our own pretty much. And we're servicing the triad with something that this triad has said that they wanted. Same with the Triangle and every place else. So same for you. Definitely glad we're able to continue doing this and help each other's brands out. Just get sports content out to sports fans in the area that have been asking for it, and no one's really tried to give it to them. So that's what we're all trying to do. So definitely appreciate you being on as well. We're gonna go ahead and get out of here. Hope you enjoyed your lunch hour. Get back to work. It's it's Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. Mark Pruitt from the Winston-Salem Journal will be with me as we do some previewing. Got high school football coming up Friday, so it's a high school football Wednesday tomorrow. We'll check you then.